All right, my quick little cheat key there wasn't working for unmuting my microphone, but we are good now. Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome. It is that time of the week again. It is Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is time to do some live hanging out, some live chatting, and some live teaching. So if you guys somehow aren't familiar with my channel or who I am and just somehow stumbled in here, just a quick refresher. I am Bart Johnson. I am a cinematographer and YouTuber currently based in the Northern Virginia area. And today we're going to be sitting down for about 45 minutes to an hour and going over some stuff and doing some chatting and some discussion, and like I said, some teaching as well. So today, the subject we're going to be covering, if you couldn't have guessed from the title and also from this guy right here, is we are going to be talking about drones. And so there's a lot to cover, but I'm going to do my best to get through all of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what some of the drone options are that are out there. We're going to talk a little bit about the rules and regulations and flying responsibly. We're also going to talk about what it takes to fly them professionally and sort of what that means. And then I'm going to get into also some technical settings and some techniques to help you get the best footage from your drones. And it really took me the longest time to accept the term drone. For the longest time, I kept fighting people. I was like, it's not a drone, it's a quadcopter. A drone is autonomous. I'm flying this, but whatever. It's become drone. We're calling them drones. They're drones. So guys, like I said, this is the live show. So if you are tuning in live, feel free to join in the live chat. I can pop the live chat up on the screen, so everyone should be able to see your comments, and I will be fielding questions and comments along the way. And also I have a live feed over here to monitor and make sure I don't miss anything when they're not up on the main screen. And if you're not joining us live, if you're watching the replay and the playback of this video, well, I'm sorry to say you missed all the live fun, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. Please feel free to comment in the description down below, leave any questions, any comments, or just blatantly tell me I did something wrong, because hey, I'm not perfect, so there's a possibility. But keep the conversation going down in the comments, and if you are live, feel free to chime in at any time. But without further ado, I am going to get us up and started here. So the first thing I want to talk about is drones are relatively new to the market as a product, at least as a consumer product. And what I mean by that is there used to be all sorts of DIY solutions, but they weren't very good, and you had to be very technical to be able to assemble one yourself. And then recently, I'd say within the past maybe even just 3-4 years, companies started taking the technology and simplifying it and making it a lot easier for consumers and professionals to get their hands on it, not have to worry so much about the technical stuff of constructing these things and flying these things, and allowed us to get really amazing cameras up into the sky. And so one of the companies that I'm sure everyone has heard of and is sort of the king of the drone market is DJI. And DJI makes this copter that I have right here. This is the DJI Phantom 4. I also started flying with the DJI Phantom 1s way back when, before they even had cameras. You had to strap a GoPro onto it. But as much as you want to say about there being a problem with there being monopoly in the market and one company sort of crushing all the others, DJI is doing some amazing things to push the technology forward and also to make it safer, more cinematic, and all of that. And DJI right now is really, I think, the way to go. Not only is their stuff great, but the costs are really low in comparison to some other companies. And what I want to do right now is I want to take you through some of DJI's offerings and show you some of the different levels that are out there. You don't have to dive into something that's $1,400. There are other options out there if you want to get better at flying, or even if you just want to capture still some actually pretty decent footage. So I'm going to get us pulled up here, and let's see here. So we'll go, yeah, there we go. We'll dive right in here. So like I said, DJI has several levels of their drones that they make available to people. So I'm going to start at the bottom and sort of work our way up. So obviously, or not obviously, but maybe you've heard of this one. The DJI Spark is the latest drone that they came out with. And this thing is the size of, or at least the body is like the size of an iPhone. So it fits in your hand, it's very small, it's very portable. And it's got an affordable price point of about $499, $500 to get a drone. It has a camera on it, it has a 2-axis gimbal. It does not shoot in 4K, but it shoots high quality 1080 footage. And it really, you know, while it is a stripped down version, doesn't necessarily have all the professional bells and whistles. This is a high quality drone that you can get here, and who wouldn't love the options of different colors? Look at that. And you know, they have a kit that'll kit it out a little bit more for a little bit of extra money. But basically for entry level or just amateur or hobbyist, or you just want to fly something and get some cool footage, even if it's just like in your backyard or on vacations or something like that, the Spark is a viable option. So moving up in rank, let's go to the next one here. Next one, this guy's maybe a little bit over a year old at this point, and this is the Mavic Pro, and this was DJI's first entry into that sort of pocket-sized drone market. And the Mavic, you can see, is a little bit more expensive at $1,000, but because of that, it comes with a few more features. So it's a little bit faster. It's a little bit more customizable in terms of the functions that you can do with it. It is capable of shooting video at 4K. Now, granted, not 4K higher frame rates like some of the higher models, but it can shoot 4K, so that puts it above the Spark, and that may be attractive to people if you're shooting video, if you want to be able to shoot in 4K. And so this was a fantastic little drone that collapsed up, and I've heard that actually it collapsed is roughly the same size as the Spark, because the Spark's arms don't fold in, so I've heard that these are comparable in size to travel with. So there's the Mavic Pro. So if you're moving up a tier, Mavic Pro might be something that you're interested in. Now, moving on up the ladder, this one everyone should recognize. This is the DJI Phantom. Now, the Phantom was pretty much DJI's flagship consumer drone when it came out with the Phantom 1s. This is the one that really started to change everything and was really just, you know, made everything easy enough for a consumer to purchase the thing and get it up in the air and start flying. Unfortunately, because of that, this is also the one you end up seeing on the news most of the time when somebody goes and does something stupid. But the Phantom has gone through several iterations. Like I said, I have a Phantom 4, and now they're actually up to the Phantom 4 Pro. And so this body, obviously, it has a much nicer built-in camera. It does 4K up to 60 frames per second, at least on the Pro. My model does not. So keep that in mind. But the Phantom 4, all models will do 4K. It's just that the Pro, they bumped it up to this 60 FPS. And this is really getting into what I'd call a prosumer range of quadcopter, where we're straddling the border between you can be just a hobbyist or you can start using this for professional video because the quality is really, really good. And the price tag reflects that. You're starting to push, you know, $14.99 for this one, so you're getting up there. Now the last one, I'll show it to you just briefly, but you're probably not interested in this particular model unless you have a lot of cash burning a hole in your pocket. And if this is the level that you're at, I'm not sure why you're here watching this show all about drones, because you probably know. This is their really pro series, the Inspire. So it started with the Inspire 1, and now they have the Inspire 2. This thing is absolutely insane. You can put actual Micro Four Thirds cameras on it. You can rotate the camera 360 degrees because those arms move up and out of the way. It can be dual operator, where one person just flies and the other person is controlling the camera, and it's got so many pro level features. It can shoot raw video in certain configurations and all sorts of stuff. But have a look here. We're looking at $3,000 for just the body itself. Take notice, there's no gimbal and there's no camera included for that price. So for most people, myself included, this is out of the price range. Unless you are making 100% of your income, or it's your bread and butter to make money shooting aerial video, usually you don't find people bringing these things out. But I wanted to go over that. So moving right along, let's pull us back up here. Sorry guys, I got a lot going on. So those are some of the drones that are available from DJI, and DJI really is leading the market. DJI really seems to be the one that has affordable prices and reliable and great technology. Not sponsored by DJI. I love their stuff. I own a ton of their stuff. And I just think it's a good investment. So if you're looking into them, DJI is a good route to go and a good company to look at. And because especially they have all those tiers now. I just listed 4 different tiers of drones, so there should be something in their product lineup that'll suit what you want and the level that you're at. So the next thing that I want to get into, I mentioned how you end up seeing these on the news a lot, is because people end up not following the rules and regulations that are currently in place and doing something stupid, and we want to avoid that. So for a long time, the FAA was trying to catch up because the technology was moving faster than the law could keep up. And so they had to rush and scramble and come up with some regulations for these aircraft that weren't so strict that they were being treated as full-size aircraft, but they had to have some regulations on them because they couldn't have them just all over the place. Because while they are small, there is the potential still to be dangerous and do some damage. So so the FAA did get their act together and came out with some regulations. And if you're interested in seeing sort of what those regulations are, I'm not going to go into and over everything because this would be a really boring show, but I'm going to give you access to where you can read in depth into the information. So let's go ahead and let's pull that up right now. So here we go. So links to this stuff is in the description down below if you guys want to go ahead and check that out beyond this. But the FAA does actually, and again, let me just say this. I'm based in the US, so all of the stuff that I'm sharing with you guys is rules and regulations for the United States. The FAA is our governing organization for airspace here in the US. So this only applies to anyone who's flying in the US. So sorry guys, if you're tuning in from another country, you're going to have to find your own regulatory commission there and see what their regulations are. But if you do visit the United States, this is still good stuff for you to look at, to know where you can and can't fly, what you can and can't do, because you don't want to get in trouble. So the FAA does have an entire unmanned aircraft systems, which is what they call drones. And certain model aircraft other than just quadcopter type. But they do have a site set up. It's a very boring, very government website, but it does have a lot of information, and it is something that everyone has access to, and I really encourage you to go and check it out because there's a lot of stuff in there. So one of the things that they have is under the Where to Fly section. I've already pulled it up here. So you can go through and you can learn about airspace restrictions. You can learn about all the zones that are absolutely off limits, because there are areas that are off limits, like national parks is one of them. Too many people were doing damage and scaring wildlife and just going rampant in national parks because, of course, they have beautiful scenery, but people were not being responsible. And so here they have some of the safety guidelines here. You know, fly at or below 400 feet and stay away from surrounding obstacles. So 400 feet is the flight deck in the United States. That is as high as you can go. You know, keep it within line of sight. Never fly near other aircraft, especially near airports. Never fly over groups of people. Never fly over stadiums or sports events. So here's just a really simple list that should get you started. And a lot of these things seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised how many times somebody winds up on the news and, you know, they have spotted one of these things flying, you know, right outside of an airport that is active or something like that. And it seems like it all should be common sense. But it's just, you can't expect people to actually have common sense these days. So if you are flying, please, please, please do us all a favor as a community. And the only way we can avoid higher restrictions is if we stick with these regulations here, and you can read much more in depth. Ice Entertainment checking in from London, UK. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you joining. If you have any questions or comments along the way, please feel free to leave them. I know most of this stuff doesn't apply to you because I'm going through United States regulations right now, but like I mentioned a little earlier, if you do want to come over to the US and fly a drone, this stuff will help you out. So one thing that's absolutely incredible, and this surprised the hell out of me, was that the FAA actually put together an app. And the app is called B4UFLY. And I was surprised because it's the government. I don't expect them to get anything done in a timely fashion or anything like that. But they've created this app to help you know if you're inside or outside of a restricted flight zone and what the regulations are for where you are. So I highly recommend that you get a hold of and download the B4UFLY app. And again, links are in the description down below. And I want to show you guys real quick what this app looks like. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to go over to my phone here. Oh, getting likes on Instagram. So I keep it in here in my DJI folder where I keep most of my apps for flying. And here it is. We'll boot up the B4UFLY app. So it tells you a little bit here, some privacy notice, safety is everyone's responsibility, blah, 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 legal jargon, but good tips. So we'll click continue. And we have here now, this is actually new, FAA warns unauthorized drone operators that they may be subject to significant fines if they interfere with emergency response operations. So they've put that in there in response to the recent natural disasters that have been occurring in the United States. You know, we've for years had wildfires and stuff like that, but recently, you know, we've had 2 hurricanes, we've had a lot of stuff going on, and people tend to like to fly over and get footage of that stuff, but sometimes it interferes with rescue operations or firefighting operations, any stuff like that. So they've added this just to give you a heads up that you are properly warned to steer clear of those areas, especially if operations are taking place. So that's good that they've got that in there. So now we'll get to the main interface. So it's very plain. Like I said, it's a government-made app. So it's not the prettiest. It's not the, you know, it's a little clunky sometimes. But what it does is it checks your current location. And you can see I am right next to Washington, D.C. right now. And so it tells me, do not fly your aircraft. You are in an area with flight restrictions. And DC is a flight prohibited area. So it tells me that I've got flight restrictions in my area, and it tells me that I'm within 5 miles of an airport, another place you can't fly. Now let's click on more status and see what it shows me. So it shows me all of this stuff. Flight prohibited, use caution, like tons of stuff. Basically in the area that I'm at, I have every do not fly warning possible. So I cannot fly anywhere near here. But where can I fly? So what we can do is we can hit the map. Now this takes a second to load, but this is going to show exactly where I am, and it's going to show where the no-fly zones and where the restricted zones are in my area. So we'll let that sucker boot up there for a little bit, because it always seems to take a little bit of time on this screen. And it's recently since an update, so I'm not sure what's going on. But in the meantime, guys, if you are joining us live and you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and pop them in the chat, because I encourage discussion. Otherwise, it's just a guy talking for 45 minutes. So here we go. You guys can see where I am. And this map is very detailed, shows you all of the airports, all of the helipads, all of everything, and also shows you these red circles. The dark red one is the direct DC no-fly zone, and then the bigger circle is the outer no-fly zone for DC. So I gotta go a long way outside of where I live before I can fly. And even then, this, you can see there are some yellow circles hidden under here. Those are other airports. And so yellow is not necessarily a do not fly, but it'll give you cautions and restrictions, and the app will actually prompt you. If you go into that status thing, it'll tell you all of the details about the airspace. See, I've got national parks here and everything too. And it'll tell you, and if like, okay, you're within 5 miles of this small airport. So it won't say you can't fly. It just says fly with caution and notify the tower. And a lot of times it'll even give you contact information. It may even have a phone number where you can call and tell the tower that, hey, from noon till 1, I'm going to be flying, over the cornfields out here. And maybe there's a small, personal airport nearby or something like that, or just a little tiny airport, and they can say, okay, thanks for the heads up, or they might tell you no, and if they tell you no, that's it. But the main idea is that this app is free, it's available, you should have it, you should open it first every time that you are in a location that you're thinking about flying. All right, so let's get back to Safari here. So we talked about the app, we talked about all that stuff. Okay, so next I want to talk about drone registration. So drone registration was something that was going on here in the United States, and they made registration available, and they made it a requirement for drones weighing between 0.55 pounds and 50 pounds. And it was $5 to register, and what you get is a little number, and then they have you slap it on your drone, almost like a license plate number on your vehicle. And that just helps them know if something happens and it crashes, there's a discrete private number on it, but they can look it up and figure out sort of who's responsible. And so they have a website for registering. Now, as of recently, oh, and the link is down in the description, guys, for this. So as of recently, they were requiring it, but I believe that there was a lawsuit against them, and so it got reversed, where it's no longer required, but rather encouraged, that if you are a hobbyist, meaning not flying professionally, that you don't have to register. I personally don't have a problem with registering. I put in very little personal information in there, and it's not like it's publicly accessible. I just have, a coded number that's on my drone. And it's one number that you put on all of them, but I'm not sure, so make sure that you go ahead and check the rules and regulations at the time of your drone purchase to see if hobbyists still need to register by law or not. It's $5. I don't think it's a big deal. Link is in the description down below. So there you go. If you are a professional, you have to register, and that's just all there is to it. The rate is the same, but you have to register. You don't get to skip out, regardless of what the current rule is for hobbyists. So let's go back in here. So I've mentioned this term professional versus hobbyist, and this is a big distinguisher. So they have two categories. They have hobbyist, and then they have professional. Now, what they call professional use is if you are using your drone in any way that results in you making money. So this means if you're doing aerial video for clients, you're definitely a professional. But it also means if you're using aerial video, you're shooting some aerial stuff and you put it into a YouTube channel or a YouTube video on your channel, and that video is monetized, and so you get ad revenue money or whatever it is from that video, technically that aerial footage is making you money, and you could get in trouble because you are using it professionally. So for the longest time, you had to get some waiver to be able to fly professionally, but they've finally come up with this thing called Part 107. So Part 107, and let's see here, we can go back here. Nope, not my lower third. Oh, I'm punching buttons all over the place in case you guys didn't know who I was there. So let's go back to, so Part 107 is a waiver, or it's a certification that you can get. It's not a license, it's a certification that you can get after taking a test that allows you to fly commercially, professionally. And so you need to go in and take that test. Now, it has a lot of aeronautical knowledge and stuff like that. I am actually still in the process of taking the test and getting my Part 107 because I want to be able to do this full-time professionally. And so there are lots of test prep things. So the one that I signed up for is from a website called dronepilotgroundschool.com. And this is an expensive course. It's $299. But I think it's totally worth it because not only does it over-teach me, it's not just teaching me for the test, it's teaching me a lot of best practices, it's teaching me a lot of things that I should know about aviation and about, you know, all sorts of things. So it's a little bit beyond, it is pricey. You do not have to drop this kind of money. If you are interested in Drone Pilot Ground School, again, not sponsored by them, not affiliated with them, but I do have a link to them down below. But you don't have to shell out this kind of money. The FAA has been awesome and has actually created their own remote pilot test prep course. Now I haven't looked into this, so I don't know how good it is or how, you know, user friendly it is to go through all this. It looks like it's a lot of PDFs and a lot of reading and information, but keep in mind this is free and these are the people who make the tests that you have to take. So it might be good to look into checking this out if you don't want to shell out the money for a course. And of course there are other courses that are out there that are, you know, less than $300 but more than free. And you know, if you find any of those, or if you used one of those and it was perfect for you to take the test, please go ahead and share that either in the comments, in the live chat, or in the comments down below, because that'd be great information for everybody to get. Okay, so let's see where we are now. Okay, so we've gone through the nitty-gritty and boring stuff. I've eaten about half of our time, but that stuff is important. I will leave it to you guys to go read further in depth in the FAA documentation and rules. So I have all that available for you guys. But now let's get into the fun stuff. When we get these up in the air and we start shooting some video. Now, I do want to let you guys know that I have a video already on my channel all about getting cinematic aerial footage, and it is actually aptly called 10 Tips for Cinematic Aerials. So I do have that video. It's been really popular and I share some tips and tricks. I'm going to repeat some of those tips and tricks in this video, but I encourage you to go check that video out for some more in-depth stuff. You know, didn't want to have to make you watch an hour-long live stream just to get the content. It's available out there on that video as well. And so let's go ahead here. Let's see. Oh, we have somebody else joining us here. Who do we have? Michael Simmons, awesome info. And yes, it is important. Thank you very much for joining and for commenting. And yeah, it is important to get that legal stuff out of the way. But once you get the legal stuff out of the way, then we get to the fun stuff. And that's what I want to get into right now. So let me go ahead and get us all set up. And we will dive in here. Actually, before I do that, I'm getting ahead of myself, The first thing I want to dive into is some technical details. Some tech stuff that you should set up before you put it up in the air, just to make sure that you have the best settings and everything working for you to get the best quality video. And the very first thing that I'm going to say is no matter what type of drone or camera you're using, I find it best to use manual settings. So take as much control away from the camera and away from those automatic settings as you possibly can, and dial in your exposure and your white balance and all that stuff yourself. Now there's, you know, DJI has now made it very easy to do it from the controller once you're up in the air, so you don't have to guess while you're down on the ground. That's what we used to have to do when I was flying with GoPros. You had to set it up guessing what everything would be when it's up in the air. But now it's very easy. So please try to use manual settings and familiarize yourself with your drone's manual settings. And so now I'm going to get into some of those manual settings for you guys. So where were we? We are going here into Adobe Premiere. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is ISO. A lot of these drones will allow you to set your ISO, and you have a choice over it. So ISO is obviously the sensitivity of your sensor to light. So as the light goes down and you've done everything else you can to open up your exposure, whether it be adjusting the shutter, which I tend to avoid, and I'll get into that next, or, you know, a lot of them have fixed aperture. If you're not getting enough light, your next thing is to bump up the ISO. But the thing you need to keep in mind is that the sensors in these guys are so small, so they have a lot of difficulty boosting ISO. And I have an example here. This is a shot at Penn State that I did, and it at first glance it's a beautiful shot. This is just in log, ungraded, but as you can see, the light was starting to go down. So it was getting dark, and unfortunately it was too dark at this point for me to get a properly exposed shot. I had to jack the ISO up on this shot on the Phantom to 800. Now that doesn't seem like much because on bigger cameras you can shoot 800 all the time. But keep in mind, these sensors are so tiny. It's like a cell phone size sensor sometimes. And so let's take a look at it. I'll show it to you guys in full size here. And watch it play through and watch the trees and everything. I'm not sure if you can see it on YouTube, but the noise is just awful. No, computer's struggling. But it is just dancing. Sorry guys, having some playback issues there. Guess I should have rendered it first. But this is an example of when I did not do a good job. You know, this shot is, unfortunately, you can really see it in here, and in the grass it's just dancing around. This shot is, you know, you might be able to salvage it with grading, but really it's not very good. It's not the way that I should have run that. Oops, I was just making sure we weren't losing some frames. So keeping that ISO as low as possible is one of the tips that I want to share with you guys. So my next tip is going to be regarding shutter speed. So here we go, have a shot. This is from a long time ago. This is actually with a GoPro on the Phantom 1. And I'm gonna play it for you, and I wanna see if you've ever seen this kind of effect happening in any of your footage and kind of wondered what it was. So let's play it. And you see all those crazy lines running across the front of the image? You look at that, and you might be wondering to yourself, you know, what in the world is causing that? And how do I get it to go away? Well, that is actually the shadow from the propellers coming across the lens, and it's causing that kind of look. Another issue that you can get is sometimes you get that sort of jello cam from vibrations and stuff as it's flying. And the reason this is happening is because your camera is automatically adjusting the shutter speed to compensate for the brightness of the scene. So in order to darken the scene, the camera is boosting the shutter speed way up to the point where it's fast enough that the shutter can actually see those little micro shadows coming across the front of the lens. So how in the world do you avoid that? Well, I've preached about these before, and I will do it again. You need to use ND filters. It's just like any other camera. If it is too bright, you need to control the light. And yes, they do make ND filters for drones. And so this is an ND16. This is made for my Phantom 4, and this one is actually made directly by DJI, but there's a company out there called Polar Pro who makes sets of ND filters for the entire range of DJI drones. They actually even just came out with some for the Spark. They're teeny tiny, it's ridiculous. But what these do is they allow you to control the amount of light that's coming in so that your camera is not gonna jack up the shutter speed, or you don't even manually have to jack the shutter speed way up, and you start getting these weird artifacts and issues. So ND filters, invest in them, especially if you're gonna shoot in bright sunlight, which, let's be honest, that's the best stuff to shoot in. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of artificially lit drone stuff out there. But ND filters, big tip, really important. Check them out. Polar Pro. And DJI has them, but Polar Pro has a lineup for freaking everything. So let's dive back in here. So we've gone over that. So one of the other technical settings and things that I like to do is I like to shoot in log. Now, I just did a show last week all about log and how it works, and that includes how it works on drones. So please go ahead and check that out if you want more in depth. But as you can see here, this is shot in log, and the footage doesn't look so fantastic. You know, it's kind of flat and desaturated, but what it allows me to do is it allows me in post to really work my colors, and then I can grade this sucker so it looks the way that I want it. So, you know, maybe you don't want to shoot in log, maybe you want it to look great just straight out of the camera. That's fine, but when I'm shooting for more cinematic stuff, I tend to shoot in log. I like it, and I've had a lot of success with it. And like I said, last week's live show was all about log, how it works, how to expose for it, and all that. And all of that applies to drones as well. So let's go ahead here. Let's pull up our chat real quick and see what we've got going. I keep hitting my lower third. I'm losing my mind. I rearranged all my buttons, and my muscle memory isn't used to it yet. So I apologize. I'm not trying to show you my name 30 times. Michael Simmons. Which drone is best for 4K anamorphic footage? Ooh, that's a tricky one. So anamorphic requires you to put a you're gonna have to put some sort of lens filter on it if you're using something smaller like this. And the problem with that is usually anamorphic lens filters have a lot of glass in them, and so they get heavy, and so they start messing with your gimbal, and you might not have good results. Really, if you want to shoot 4K anamorphic, you're talking even bigger than the DJI Inspires. You're probably looking at some octocopter stuff and putting a camera that's capable of doing anamorphic footage with a big anamorphic lens on it. Even something like the GH5 that I'm shooting on right now can do anamorphic. You have to put a hefty lens or a hefty lens adapter on there that does anamorphic. But then you need something big enough to carry this, and even the DJI Inspires aren't big enough to do that. So you're getting into a real big professional rig at that point to do 4K anamorphic. So Michael, you say I'm in Los Angeles near LAX, so I know there are rules you have to follow. Good, yes, please do not go flying around LAX and wind up with your 15 seconds of fame on the news there for the wrong reasons. Hello, Armando from Dominican Republic. Thank you so much for joining. Like I said, I appreciate everyone joining from all over the place. While we are talking about, or we're talking about a lot of stuff for regulations in the US, you can go and seek out your own regulations, but it is important for you to know if you come and fly in the US. And the rest of this video is going to be all fun stuff about actually shooting, so that's good. Drone On says, stay away from the cheap brand filters, stick with Polar Pro. Yeah, I, for the most part, have just the DJI ones directly from them. I learned about Polar Pro after I bought this set, but I have a lot of Polar Pro filters for other things. I even had Polar Pro filters for my GoPros and stuff like that. So they do high quality stuff. Definitely check out Polar Pro for filters for drones. So let's dive back in as our clock ticks away here. I'm gonna pull up Premiere and we'll move right along. So I've gone over the technical stuff. I talked about, shooting manual, keeping your ISO as low as possible, which I did not do here. Shooting with those ND filters to avoid weird artifacts and stuff. And my personal preference is to shoot in log, but that depends on whether you want to or not. If you want to do work in post or if you want your footage to be good to go. Now let's get into actually making these suckers move and getting some cinematic stuff. I'm sorry I front loaded this with all the boring stuff, or at least the sort of heavier material. So boom, we are all looking for some sort of cinematic composition. We are looking for something that looks like a movie and is great. And so we need to keep in mind that this is a camera. We need to compose our shots as if we're composing shots on the ground. It's just a camera way up high where you can't reach it, but you still need to apply stuff like the rule of thirds and drawing your viewer's interest. And so I have some examples here. So this is an example of the rule of thirds. Rule of thirds says that if you intersect your frame, cut it into thirds vertically and horizontally, that there are some key points and key lines where your audience's attention will naturally be drawn and gives you a really good looking shot. So let's take a look at this here. As you guys can see, this is something that I shot. Actually, I was chasing another drone that was chasing a car for a film, but I lined everything up on these sort of interest lines. And so it makes the shot play through actually very nicely. And of course it wasn't perfect because it was really difficult, but I was able to frame all that. That's something you want to do. This is another shot. This was in Baltimore years and years ago. This is, again, Phantom 1 with a GoPro. And if I play it, you can see I'm keeping the Penn Station statue right along that interest line. Oh, there's my face from that video. You can see it. But I'm keeping it right along that line. And so it makes an interesting frame, as opposed to just sticking this right in the middle. Now I have it here. It gives a nice sort of dynamic shot. And these are just things that you need to think about. You know, you're composing an interesting shot. If it would be a boring shot on the ground, it's going to be a boring shot in the air. So let me show you guys an example. You always want to be looking out for some cool stuff to find. So here's something that I shot in Lynchburg, Virginia just last week. There's a freaking rainbow formed by this fountain. And it just looked gorgeous. And so, you know, I was on the lookout for the angles and was able to find that shot and put the drone up in the air and get the angles and go around. And this is just, you know, it's one of my favorite shots. I was saying, joking, that it was a bucket list thing to get a drone shot of a of a rainbow, even though it's created by a fountain. You know what? I'll count it. So there we go. So let's check our chat real quick, and then I'm gonna have to keep us moving along here. Don't have infinite time today, unfortunately. So what do we got here? So Polar Pro, Michael Simmons got it. Awesome. Nth Degree Aerial Perspectives, thank you for joining. Appreciate you coming. Does the Mavic Pro shoot better video in 2.7K over 4K? I think it does. You know what? I don't have any actual experience with the Mavic Pro, so I can't personally speak to that. That's something that you're just going to have to do some searches and check some forums and find out and see some sample footage for yourself, because I can't tell you one way or the other with any level of certainty, unfortunately. But thanks for commenting. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to get us back in here and move us right along. Okay, so we're looking for cinematic stuff. So, you know, we got rule of thirds, just having an eye for, you know, really cool stuff that's happening. But there are some ways to be certain that you're getting good quality stuff. And one is to utilize foreground elements. So if you put a drone way up in the air and move it side to side without any foreground elements, you're not going to know that it's not going to look like it's barely moving at all. So you want to have some parallax effect by having foreground, middle ground, background. And so here's a shot that I did down in Texas. And I'm really sorry about the rendering and buffering, guys, here. I should have pre-rendered these out. That's my bad. But you see, I have this American flag here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push up past it. And this shot would be really boring if I didn't have this flag here. So let's take a look. So we can see that we're moving because we have the relationship of the camera to this flag. And then we go past it and we get the city. So imagine if it was just the city and I was slowly moving forward. It wouldn't be nearly as dramatic of a shot. I mean, it also helps that it's a waving, beautiful American flag in there. But, you know, having this foreground element really makes the difference in the shot and lets us see that the camera is moving forward. Another example here, like I showed before, you know, this was years ago in Penn Station in Baltimore, but this, using this statue and even this building, you'll see in this shot, I end up with multiple layers. So we have this to show the motion. Then we have this, and then we open up and we see the whole city behind it. So we have 3 layers, you know. In this one, I not only have foreground, but I also have middle ground, and then eventually I have background. And adding those layers to a shot is an age-old cinematographer's trick. You know, you do that with any shot, you know, even when you're on the ground. So you really just treat this as a camera in the sky and shoot exactly the way you would shoot something and compose a shot on the ground. So let me give you guys one more example here. So here we go. This is something out in Sedona, Arizona. So I've got foreground of these rocks here. But what these are going to do, and you'll see something really cool, is it's going to show me some scale and perspective of my shot, because it's really hard to tell. These look like they're tiny bushes, but they're freaking trees. So by keeping that in the foreground, and watch this, here we go, boom. I don't know if you can really see it, but that's a person right there. So I have foreground that gives me scale for this shot and lets me see just how vast and open, there's the person, how vast and open all of this is. And so that gives me a very cinematic shot and very cinematic effect. So making sure to keep those foreground elements in there is really important, and layering your shot, giving it depth. Like I said, cinematic trick, I could be talking about just how to shoot anything, but this is really important for drones as well. So my next tip is everybody gets their drone and they want to fly it as high as they're legally allowed to at 400 feet, right? And just see everything, see as far as they can. Well, that's not always the best decision. Sometimes the best decision is to fly low. And let me show you what I mean. So here we go. We have a shot, if it ever loads up. Sorry guys, computer's dragging here. Let me just check my stream. Yeah, we're still good. So we have a shot here of a football field in Texas, and I fly the drone down the football field. Jesus, the buffering's crazy. Sorry, you guys. Really should have pre-rendered. So I fly the drone down the football field. Okay, cool shot, right? But I got the drone a little bit lower, and I put the drone freaking like on the football field. And now we get this. And even though it's only maybe 50 feet lower than it was before, it has this much better sense of momentum, of movement. It's much more dynamic. And then we also get this awesome thing where we, go right past the scoreboard of the Taylor Ducks. And it's just, it's a much better shot than just, okay, we've got the whole football field from up high. Flying low, sometimes you can fly really low. So this is the kind of thing that you get this shot and sometimes people wonder like, whoa, how did they dolly out across that? That's crazy. So here I just flew the drone out over this field of whatever that is. I'm only a few feet above it, and it's a really cool shot. You might not look at that and be like, oh, that's a drone or an aerial shot, but that's the idea, is it's a great shot, and you can't necessarily tell. You're not thinking about the equipment that was used to make the shot. You're just looking at the shot, and that's the good thing. So let's see here. I know we got a few more comments. So Michael Simmons, what about depth of field? Is that possible? So yes and no. So most drones, mine included, the sensor is so small that you don't have to worry about focusing, because the depth of field is so deep that pretty much everything is in focus. So you don't really have to worry about that. Oh, I just noticed the sun's coming out, getting bright in here. So you don't really have to worry about that because everything is in focus. Now, on the Phantom 4 Pro, they've increased the size of the sensor, and it is actually possible to get a little bit of out of focus area. And so on those, you actually do have to focus. And so they have a tap to focus thing. Most of them you don't, but as sensors get bigger and bigger and bigger, depth of field and focus is something that you're going to have to think about. If you are flying a bigger drone with like a GH5 or a full frame like 5D on it, focus is a big issue for you. But for the most part, with these sort of unpack them and fly guys, not a huge thing. And dynamic range, or not dynamic range, but depth of field really, unfortunately, isn't a tool that's as available to you. So you're going to compose with your elements and do the best that you can. So let us dive back in here. Oh, I can hear that my wife is home. We have a one-year-old's birthday party, and then something with our realtor to go to later today. So that's why I have limited time, and I'm sort of moving along through this. Michael Simmons, awesome shot. Thank you. I appreciate that. I tried to pull some good ones for you guys. Okay, so the next thing is using multiple axes of motion. So a drone is a camera platform in the sky, And like any other camera movement platform, it has capabilities. So if you had like a slider, you can move side to side. If you have a crane, you can move up and down. If you have a drone, you have every access of three-dimensional space available to you, and you should try and make use of it. So this is a shot where I'm doing a few things. I'm sort of pushing in digitally, but flying sideways and moving around an object. So I'm moving in multiple axes of motion at the same time to sort of circle this house. This is another one where tilting is my next axis of motion. I'm moving forward but tilting up at the same time. And doing both of those simultaneously gives a little bit more interest to the shot. Now, you don't want to move just for the sake of moving. You always want it to be motivated, but try to get some more motion. Use a few axes. Don't just go side to side or forward and back. And just to show you that, here's a shot of a water tower in Terrell, Texas that I did. And here I just sort of flew side to side, kind of like a slider in the sky motion. That's a beautiful shot. It looks really good. But I can make that better. So let's take it to the next level. Same water tower, added a little bit of motion to wrap around it as opposed to just sliding directly in front of it. And we end up with this. And I don't know about you, but I like this a lot better than the just side to side shot. So I'm arcing around and I'm moving sideways, and I mean, this motion compared to this motion, sorry. I mean, I just don't think there's a comparison there. Again, make sure your movement is justified. Don't just go flying all willy-nilly all over the place, but think about ways you can incorporate multiple axes of motion into your shots, and your stuff will look a lot better, I promise. So one thing you want to do is you want to fly very controlled, and you want to be as controlled as possible. And so I have this note here for tripod mode. So let's talk about that for a second. I keep hitting that button. I'm so sorry, guys. Here we go. But so my Phantom just has it now, but DJI came out with something originally with the Mavic that's called tripod mode. And you can go in through the settings and turn on tripod mode. And what it does is it made all of the movements a lot less sensitive, a lot less responsive, which means the drone didn't move as fast, it didn't turn as fast, it didn't do all this. But the benefit of that is it allowed you to do really precise movements through really tight spaces, very controlled. And they recently released an update that enables tripod mode in the Phantom 4s, actually even with my just, standard base model Phantom 4. And so I'd recommend using tripod mode if you're in one of those situations where you just can't do the controls fine enough on your own. So let's go ahead and I'll show you something. This is an example where I would have loved to have used tripod mode, but I did not. So I'm going to fly over this bridge here, and I did it just being really careful on the thumbsticks, all manual. And I did an okay job, but it's a little bit faster than I would have liked. It gets a little jerky. See, I get a little high here. I would have preferred not to have that. But utilizing tools like tripod mode, especially, if it's available to you in, if you have a DJI Phantom or Mavic, or I don't know if they have it in the Spark or not. Maybe you guys can let me know. But utilizing tripod mode is going to make a big difference, especially if you want to fly in tight spaces or do really controlled movements. So that's just a tip I wanted to throw out there. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is shooting for your edit. Let me show you what I mean by that. You want to be able to predict your edits, because sometimes when starting and stopping a movement with your drone, it's not really smooth to start and it's not smooth to stop. So what I do is I give myself a little bit of extra room because I know that I can trim that clip in editing. So let's take a look at this. So I knew I wanted a shot of this town in the freeway, sort of coming through town. So as we play along, I'm getting set. Okay, jerky starting, but I want to start here. And I start my movement. And I get my movement steady, and boom. I would probably chop my clip and start my shot in the edit right there. And then it's smooth. It's following these cars perfectly. and give myself a little bit at the end as well that I can trim off, and then I end up with a nice clip. So giving yourself a little bit of flexibility, knowing that you're going to edit the front and back off, start your movement a little bit earlier. Give yourself a second or two to smooth out your movement and your motion. Give yourself the time to make sure that your pace is steady and that you're getting everything framed properly, because you know you're going to be able to chop it and edit it later. Because jerky motions are just going to take people completely out of the shot. They're going to make people very aware of the fact that you're shooting on a drone and that it's in the sky and that you're having all those issues controlling it. So the more you can take away attention from the camera itself and smooth those motions out and everything, it's going to benefit you, because your footage is going to end up looking better, because your audience is going to be so engaged they don't even think about how you got that shot. They just think about how that shot makes them feel, how that shot looks, and how that shot moves your story along. So there we go, guys. Sorry, I gotta rush out of here in just a few minutes. But if you do have any final questions or comments, please go ahead and post them. I will gladly answer as many as I can before I have to clear out. Like I said, I kind of rushed through this. It was a lot to get through in just an hour. You know, we went through what drones are out there, which ones I recommend, which ones, or FAA regulation stuff for the United States, flying professionally, Part 107, where to do that. We went through some technical stuff of setting the camera up, and we also went through some tips and tutorials. So I want to let you guys know, if you want some more in-depth information on those cinematic techniques, again, I have a video that I did previously, 10 tips for cinematic aerials. It'll repeat some of the information that I had in here, but it is focused strictly on just getting those cinematic shots. So there's a link to that down in the description below, and I suggest you guys go and check that out. Also, if you guys are interested in purchasing any of those drones from DJI, I do have some affiliate links down in the description below. So full disclaimer, they are affiliate links, meaning that if you purchase them through that link from DJI, a portion of it does help me out to continue creating this content. So if you are thinking about buying any of those, I would really appreciate it if you guys use the affiliate links. Doesn't cost you any extra. It's benefit for you, benefit for me, and helps me, keep eating so I can stay healthy and keep this channel going. No, I'm kidding. I sink it into more worthwhile things than food, but it would help, and I would really appreciate that, guys. So yeah, let's see here. We got a comment in from Armando. You can share some tips about history of telling with drones. Not sure what you mean by that. Can you clarify for me? Share some tips about history of telling with drones. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. So try and or clarify that for me if you could, and I will try and answer. Now, guys, as I bring this to a close, I do want to give you guys a heads up for what is coming next week on the live show, Saturday at 1 p.m. So I have something a little bit different happening. I am not going to be here in my comfortable little office. I am going to be out, and I'm going to be on a shoot. Some friends of mine from the Forge Studios are working with another great production company, Fell and Fair, and are putting on a gigantic fantasy weekend-long LARPing event. It's fully immersive, and we're going to be covering it sort of documentary style, and creating potentially a television show or something like that, or a web series or something from it. It's going to be intense. We're going to be out there for days doing this and covering a lot of stuff, but it's not going to stop me from coming to you guys live. So I will be doing it from my phone, but next week, Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have live from the set of Weekend Warrior. So there you go, guys. Like I said, it's going to be quite an adventure. While fantasy and all that stuff is not necessarily my thing, grueling cinematic shoots certainly are. So I'll share with you guys a little bit about what I'm doing out there, what we've been through at that point by Saturday, and I encourage you guys to join. Now, I won't be able to pre-schedule that event like most of these are, because I'm going to have to do it from my phone. YouTube does not allow you to stream to pre-scheduled events from your phone. You just have to sort of hit live and then it'll go up. So you guys won't see a notification or a reminder for that one. It'll just go live and then you'll get a notification. So make sure that you are subscribed and that you have that notification bell clicked so that you will get that little notification as soon as I start streaming from that. But moving beyond that, I also want to give you guys a look at the week after. The week after that, I actually have 2 live shows because I am, as I'm sure you guys have, well, maybe you haven't heard. I shouldn't assume that, should I? Aperture, company that I really like, and I like a lot of their products. They have invited me to do a monthly live stream on their Facebook page. So on Friday, which one is it? Let me look. Aperture live show. Friday, October the 6th, I will be doing a live show on their Facebook page. So that won't be as long as this, but I invite you to go ahead and join in that one. So let me go ahead here and show you guys. Boom. That'll be October 6th, Friday, October 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be talking about how to find fellow creatives to work with. That includes filmmakers, artists, everybody that you would need to make a film. You know, if you live in a spot that's not necessarily like New York or LA or anything like that, there are resources that are available to you. And I'm going to, I hit the button again, I got to move those. And I am going to share that with you guys to show you how I get in contact with people and whatnot. And then, of course, the Saturday that immediately follows that, October 7th at 1 p.m., I will be back here in my studio doing this, my regular live show, and I'm going to tease that for you guys too, just to give you a heads up so that you know what's coming for the next 2 weeks. I will be doing what's in my go-to lighting kit. So I have a kit that I have, you know, painstakingly put together with my favorite equipment, and I take it on the road with me when I shoot interviews. I use it all the time, and I am going to share with you guys what is in that kit and go over some of the equipment that's in there, and we can have a discussion about what some of your favorite lighting equipment and lighting tools are as well. So there we go, guys. That's what's happening next week and the week after. Again, next week is the Weekend Warrior thing, so there won't be a scheduled event for that. Then the week after that, October 6th, I'm on the Aperture Facebook page. October 7th, we're right back here just as normal. So I appreciate all of you guys coming and hanging out and chatting. Like I said, please leave comments down below if I got anything wrong or if you want to add anything or if you have any questions. I check comments all the time. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell, guys, so that you get alerts whenever I have live shows like this or whenever I have reviews or other content that I put out there, because I do have some stuff that I'm working on. I'm so behind on it, but I'm doing what I can. So once again, guys, thank you so much for joining, and I will see you guys next week, Saturday, 1 p.m. I will be on set out in the wild from Weekend Warrior. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Take care.